welcome everyone. Here we are, just kind of chatting about all of our fun plans for this summer. I hope everybody's having a great summer this far. And for the most part, I hope your gardens are growing well. I know here at office hours, we like to feature your problem questions. And so sometimes we focus a lot on the negative and the things that aren't going just the way we would want them to. But I hope our um, wetter than average spring has gotten people's gardens off to a good start, and maybe we'll make it through with some really good harvest and some beautiful landscaping. So if you're new to office hours, thank you so much for being with us. My name is Celeste Scott, and I'm the horticulture extension specialist over here in the western region in Jackson. And we've got a lovely group of panelists on with us today who are going to be helping answer questions. We've got, well, does everybody want to introduce themselves real quick? Because we didn't do that last time. We just kind of jumped into questioning. Natalie, we'll start with
Yeah.
Natalie and then go to
Well,
Lucas.
you always suggest that we should introduce ourselves when we start talking, and it always seems like a good idea, and I always forget to do it. So I'm Natalie Baumgartner, and I'm the consumer horticulture specialist here, coming actually from my office in Knoxville this morning.
Yay! You can see that beautiful rooftop garden behind her. Lucas?
I'm Lucas Holman. I'm the Horticulture Extension Agent and County Director in Wilson County, Tennessee, home of the Tennessee State Fair.
Ooh, ooh, ooh. Awesome. Lee?
I'm Lee Rumble, commercial horticulture over in Knox County, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Thank you. Sid?
I'm Sydney Smith. I'm the Extension Horticulture Agent in Fayette County.
And Andrea?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrea Ludwig. I am the Stormwater Management Specialist for UT Extension, and I'm stationed here in Knoxville.
All right. Well, let's just go ahead and jump into questioning. Bob, when you chime in, introduce yourself for us, okay? All right. So we're going to go ahead and start with our fruit and veggie section, and then we'll wrap things up with sustainable landscapes, ornamental questions, things like that. So I'm just going to start right at the top of our submissions for this month. Also, I want to say thank you to everybody who's sending questions. We had a great variety of questions come in this month, so we're going to cover a lot of ground. This first question is about vegetable gardening, raised bed gardening, and we didn't have anybody claim this question in particular on our submission portal here, but I think we can have some good discussion here for a minute about it. So this question comes to us from Knox County. It says, this spring I did a heavy metals soil test in an old playground that had magic mulch, which I guess is cut up tires, right? Taking that impact so nobody gets broken bones and they fall off the monkey bars. My zinc is so high I cannot use complex fertilizer like manure. I have raised beds with purchased compost that did well over the winter. I planted potatoes, green beans, sweet potatoes, and cucumbers. Everything appears to be growing well this season. I have added individual chemicals with nitrogen and potassium. Maybe they meant nutrients, not chemicals. And any suggestions? They are just wondering if we have any suggestions for additional things that maybe they need to keep in mind or keep an eye out for, or be doing to help this garden area grow. And they sent us an awesome picture. So I want to share that with y'all so you can see what they're working with here. Yeah, so it looks like they have come in, on top of that old playground area and done some mulching, installed their raised beds, of course, filled that with new material, not planting right into that native soil, which they were afraid may have some issues since it had those chopped up tires on it for so long. Does anybody want to chime in with any thoughts or encouragements?
Yeah, I mean, I can share some ideas, and then I think maybe Lucas may have some other stuff he's thinking about. So, the first thing that I would say is, I mean, she referenced doing a heavy metals test and referenced zinc. Like, I would make sure that the heavy metals test covered, lead or some of the other metals. I mean, I'm assuming that it did, but I would just say let's rule out the non-plant nutritive types of heavy metals and make sure that we've covered our bases there. And then, like, from this image, many of the steps are the types of things that we would think about. I mean, like, there is no, of that tire surface covered, like lots of times, trying to seal that off and make sure that you're using material that doesn't have access to what might have been a heavy metal influenced a type of growing area. When it comes to heavy metals, sometimes what we'll see is that that's actually like a splash or a windblown type of thing. So we try to stay away from leafy vegetables and root crops. So, beans and things like that they would be good, crops in some of those areas. But we never want to purposely grow in, high heavy metal areas if there are, the more dangerous types of materials there. So those are my first thoughts. Lee, Lucas, Andrea, anybody else have anything you want to toss in there?
So if whenever I think about heavy metals too, I always think about things we can use in the off season to pull it out of the ground and we can kind of dispose of those plants. I think about some of these mustard type plants that people will use when hemp was really big a few years ago. People were testing a lot for heavy metals in the ground and they were using mustard, and they were not actually eating the mustard. They were planting the mustard. The mustard was kind of pulling the heavy metals out of the ground, and then they were disposing of the mustard out of the ground. I am not a fan of bare ground any time of the year. In my garden, we're going to have mustard or collards or turnips in the wintertime. Going to have something on it, especially in a bed like this. It may not be a bad idea this winter, September the 15th, pull everything out and go through and plant some mustard. Just, in the wintertime, go through and you can harvest that and throw that away to pull some of those metals out.
Right. Awesome. Good deal. I hope that helps guide your growing there in Knox County in that maybe that's a community garden. They didn't say that, but I'm assuming maybe it was if it was on a public property there. Okay, that kind of moves us into our next question, which shifts gears a little bit into the fruit realm of things. So, this question comes to us from Greene County, and they say, I have 5 young apple trees. They are leafed out and have some fruit. One of them leafed out with small, narrow leaves. Um, do we know what may have caused this? And how could they go about treating this particular issue? And I think, Natalie, had you marked that one?
Well, I didn't actually, but
Oh, okay.
I was just looking at that picture. If you pull that up,
Yeah,
this may actually be as much of a woody plant person question as it is, necessarily a tree fruit question because when I see really, and I think there were two
there is. There's a
pictures.
more up close one.
Yeah, I
Let
think
me
the
get that
second
one.
one has more up close. Like when I look at small leaves like that, like I wonder if there could even be a little bit of drift or something going
Yeah,
Yeah.
on
they
So,
there.
looked
yeah,
they
that's
looked a
where
little
I was headed.
scrappy.
Those top leaves look a little cut to me, and I don't know that I can guarantee this, but that fence line has a pretty distinctive
There you
dead
go, Lee.
space underneath the fence. That kind of looks cupped, so I'm leaning towards herbicide.
Yeah, let me get up here so we can.
Oh, there is a nice bare strip under that chain link, isn't there?
Under the chain link, yes.
Ah, there we are, right there.
I question if something wasn't sprayed under there.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're on the right hunch. I think that is highly likely. So look into that. Verify what type of product was used there. I want to go ahead and plug this anytime, just in case folks don't know or have forgotten that Roundup branded products have changed. And whereas at one point in time, if you bought a product that said Roundup, we assumed that it was glyphosate. Um, and that is no longer the case. So you may buy a product that looks like the container that you've always been buying that says Roundup on it, but it has more active ingredients than glyphosate does. Than just, straight glyphosate. So like amazapic, they usually include that. That can cause some issues that look similar to this. It also has residual, and so it like lasts longer than just a straight glyphosate product would. So always be very, very cautious. Say, well, I've used the same thing that I've always used and this has never happened. There are additional active ingredients in some of those products now that can cause damage to broadleaf plants, whereas maybe that wasn't something that had happened in the past when you used it. And we have this great publication that tells you all about it. So we'll make sure and get that in the chat. This is
Oh yeah, I dropped it in the chat, so
Oh, good.
I'm trying to do my best to
Yes.
Usually this is Seth, that is fast with the links. I'm like somebody's got to be on it today.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so this just kind of goes over, historically what glyphosate looked like, what are some new things that have been added, and you can see this extensive list of additional active ingredients that are included in many of these products. And the one that I see lots of problems with is this Roundup Extended Control, that second one down on the list. People don't realize that it has this imazapic, which is giving it residual. That's your long term. That's where this extended control comes into play, and those products have a little mobility in the soil, whereas glyphosate does not.
Well, and
Anybody else want to add?
this is labeled for like your driveway kind of
Mm-hmm.
control, but then people are using it more broadly and
Right, because they're assuming that it's the same product that they were using before. But if you read the label closely, it does go into detail telling you not to use this in areas near desirable plantings. So definitely. Anybody else? No, we're good. Okay, cool. All right. I think we were onto something there. Let's move on down to our next one. So nobody claimed this question, but I did a little research on it myself, and I thought it would be a fun thing because we've never talked about this before. It's about corn. This question comes to us from Rutherford County, and it says, my sweet corn crop for the second year is experiencing RGS, which is rapid growth syndrome. And I laughed when
it's
I
a
read
thing.
it.
Yeah.
I know. I know now. I didn't know before, but I did. I was like, oh, that's funny. I thought they were just going to be like, my corn's growing too much, but it's a real thing. The variety is a Lenny, or like the first part of the
I
word.
think it's a Illini.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for correcting me on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Illini.
Just a
There you
little
go.
Midwestern. Yeah. Yeah.
Illini X Sweet. I had a successful harvest 3 years ago as a midsummer planting, but this year and last year I had a problem with my spring planting. My soil test, and then it goes into details about soil tests. We can kind of bypass that for now. And then it says, well, they used some soaker hoses when things look dry. They had 5 inches of rain, and then 7 days before the tassel bending and deformation started to appear, no herbicide damage is present in any of the vegetable garden plants. And I want to know if this is possibly a variety issue, not ideal for the South, or if there are other possibilities. And I will say that yes, I feel like this is an issue, a variety type issue. So rapid growth syndrome is a physiological disorder that is induced from rapid swings in temperature, which it's sounding like maybe this person is not a Rutherford County native. Maybe they've moved here recently and are using this Illini, cultivar that they were using previously, and now they're not having success with it as much as they had in the past. So, definitely we have those temperature swings, right? And most people were shooting for getting corn in the ground early when the soil temperatures are still relatively cool so that we can get a jump on things growing. But if you start looking for cultivars of corn, there isn't going to be anything that comes out and says that it has resistance to rapid growth syndrome. But what you want to look for are cultivars that are touted as having strong vigor. And that just means that they have aggressive growth habits throughout the season, and maybe more importantly, like a steady growth pattern early on as it's emerging. And a couple that kind of fit that bill. There are more, but I'm just throwing in some names that looked familiar to me that I know people are growing successfully in Tennessee. Bodacious and Delectable are two that are easy to find, both delicious. They're both SE varieties, or like sugar enhanced is kind of, what that stands for. So it's kind of like a step up from our regular, old timey sweet corn. And Natalie can tell us more about that. And definitely just stick with it, right? So, and just know that we are going to have some of those crazy temperature swings, especially in early spring, and that it's nothing that you're doing, and it's not related really to your soil nutrients or anything that you are or are not providing that particular corn plant. So it's physiological and it's triggered by temperature. Anything else? Does
We'll
anybody
run
else
into
know
some
anything else?
other physiological discussions when we get down in some of the other vegetable questions because it has been temperature, moisture, we've just been
And,
bouncing. So,
and since I was doing all that talking, I didn't show the picture, but here I'm going to show it because it was interesting and I didn't know about it, and so now I want everybody else to see about it too. And so one of the common names for this is called buggy whipping, and so this is early on, but essentially what happens is these leaves in the top, you can't see the very top here, but they like twist and roll together and like make like a buggy whip. And apparently, if you have a variety that has is touted for having this strong vigor, they will just kind of rectify themselves. Not always, but in the weeks to come, as the corn continues to grow, they're just gonna grow out of that condition. But it can make it more susceptible to like snapping, right? So the top of that, it can get so heavy that it gets caught in the wind and then like bends it over and snaps it. And then that's your problem, right? So that's what we want to avoid. But anyway, buggy whipping, huh? Rapid growth syndrome. There we go. Learning something new. I love it.
with like 60% of our gardeners or something growing in raised beds and containers, we honestly don't get that many sweet corn questions. So we're
Yeah,
glad we've still got some sweet corn growers out there.
definitely. Hanging in there. Don't give up. Let's just swap gears. Let's just change to some different cultivars and see if that helps us out there. Okay, what's next on our fruit and veggie lineup for today? Let's see. Oh, how about an apple question? We always need a good apple question. Everybody likes to grow that most challenging fruit tree that, well, I don't know, peaches might beat
Yeah.
apples on the challenge list. I don't know. But let's jump right in. So this comes to us from Fentress County. Thank you, Fentress, for submitting a question. It says, this red delicious apple was planted in 2019, the first time fruiting, and I noticed that the trunk was splitting. It goes from the bud union to the beginning of the lateral branches. They also saw white cottony stuff underneath the bark. So, what panelists, what do we think might be happening here? Who's
Okay.
sharing that picture? Oh,
Yeah.
Natalie. I was like, who's doing my job? No,
It's
I'm
a
just kidding.
mystery. Yeah. Um, no, I think that we're probably looking at woolly apple aphid here. So this is one of the most common. This is a sap feeding insect and it has some of those crazy filaments that make it hard to contact with materials. And the interesting thing about this on apples is that its location on the plant varies during its life cycle. So often, well, it'll spend a reasonable amount of time feeding on the roots, which is where often some of the most damage takes place with root feeding. And so we actually have some cultivars that have rootstocks that are, resistant to woolly apple aphid, but of course it can feed on the upper part too. And sometimes, we can kind of see here that it's attracted to some of these wound areas. So we think about the preventive measures, rootstock selection for resistance, and then preventive management so that hopefully we don't get some of these cracks and things like that. I don't know which aspect we're looking at, but my tree guys can like I would
Yeah.
hypothesize this might be a aspect related temperature thing. Is that what you're thinking, Lee?
Yeah, so I'm more nervous about this picture than I am the actual
Yeah.
rosy apple aphids for sure. This is, the instigator. I wouldn't think that the rosy apple aphids necessarily caused this. This could be one of two things. Frost cracks, we do see those, an old frost crack that's trying to compartmentalize, or possibly even sun scald. Or I might even look at planting depth because boy, that stem really gets small
Just
down there at the base of the ground. Yeah. So I'm curious if that split actually starts at the soil level or is it a little higher up? It's hard to see here, but those are my two initial thoughts. Something else probably caused this, and yeah, we do see rosy apple aphids all the time. I've not seen them on the trunk. Usually they are more twig based, but I mean, certainly if there's exposed tissue, there's no reason they wouldn't want to find security inside of that open space.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's a great, like, we're kind of driving. Yes, we see an insect issue, but likely a more serious threat is, some of the structural damage to the tree.
For
So,
sure.
um, so you can treat, the like trying to get those when they're in the adult form, is one of the best options. But cultivar selection, one of the things that I guess I would suggest gently is that we've probably got some options that might be better for our area than Red Delicious. So expanding the apple palette and getting some resistant rootstocks might be an option. But I mean, you can treat, for the adult form of this, but there might be some other things to look at. Does anybody else have anything they want to toss in there?
I was just going to say we have that great selection publication that can guide you on some, more appropriate cultivars. So you're like, okay, that's great, but which ones are it? So if you'll go to uthort.com, and maybe we can get the link here in a minute, but if you just go to uthort.com, go to fruits, apples, there's a tab right there for apples, and then you'll see one that says selection, and that document has some really good guidance on the ones to kind of steer clear of. We're not saying like you could never do it or never make it work, but it's a red light system, if I'm not mistaken, right, Natalie? So we've got the ones that maybe we should steer clear of in red. Those that are kind of in the middle grounds are yellow, and then the ones that we're like, yes, let's rely on those are green. So definitely check that out.
I've gotten in the habit of telling people if it's a variety you can buy at the store, it's probably not going to be the easiest one to grow in Tennessee because most of them are bred in Michigan, Minnesota.
Yeah.
They're just not Tennessee heat apples.
Yes. And everybody loves that Honey Crisp too, but even like apple growers hate growing apple like Honey
Ours
Crisp.
do.
Like, I mean, the people who are in it for real, like that is not the one they like to grow.
Yeah,
Lots of
it's a
problems.
picky one. And there are some in the crisp family, like Cosmic Crisp. Like we have some crisps that are more likely success
Yeah.
stories that are becoming much easier to find.
But I know how picky family members can be, especially those children, right? My kids, they know that that's the one they like. And if I get one, I just sometimes just tell them it is when it's not. And they're like, this apple tastes different. I'm like, shut it. But anyway, okay. Let's move on to okay, let's hop back to a vegetable question. And this is a question we get a lot, but I feel like it's worth talking about because the more we talk about the more enlightened people will be on this topic, okay? This comes to us from Knox County. Thank you, question submitter. What is going on with my tomatoes? We cannot have an office hour without tomato questions, right? The bottoms are getting flattened and decaying. These were like this on the vine. They were not sitting on the ground. And I think Sid had some information that she wanted to share with us. And then everybody else, we can jump in because we know that this is a crazy issue and can have multiple causes.
Yes, so this is extremely common. This is blossom end rot. It's actually caused by a calcium deficiency and usually results from low levels of calcium in the soil or a lack of soil moisture, which I don't think we're really lacking lately. Um, any condition that reduces the root's ability to absorb water or calcium is can cause this. It's usually a passing problem, so it usually affects just the first and second clusters of the fruit.
Mhm.
And so after that, most of the time you won't even see any issues with no actions required. But you can do calcium chloride sprays on the foliage, that may help prevent this blossom end rot on developing fruit, and try to prevent excessively wet conditions. which unfortunately has been a issue here lately. So,
Yes. And so often, right? Like the first thing that comes to everybody's mind is, oh, I don't have enough calcium in the soil. And so then they're, adding all of these amendments to the soil to try to get that calcium level up. But more times than not, it's not that the calcium isn't present, it's that it doesn't have the ability to take up that nutrients. Does that make sense? Yeah. So like all those things that you said makes complete sense. And Natalie, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there some research out there that also shows that just like drastic swings in any kind
Mhm.
of environmental stress can just kind of like induce this
Yeah.
problem aside from calcium?
Yeah. So, of course, this is frustrating to gardeners, but it's wildly intriguing to plant physiologists
Yeah.
because it can, we can induce it from both directions. Sid was right, is that if we have a wet period that goes dry, then our root system is not well tuned for that. And if we have, a dry period that then goes wet, then that reduces kind of the signals that the plant is being sent by the environment. So,
Mhm.
if we have a lot of humidity, then the plant is not moving water and calcium. If we have a lot of dry, then it doesn't have water and calcium to move. So, um, and I've actually seen more of this on my peppers this year than I have on my tomatoes. So, that we would see this same similar type of condition, and yeah, kind of early in the season until things even out. Especially because you think about um, a lot of our determinate tomatoes, as well as most of our bell peppers, like they're going to have a heavy fruit load as they really get going. And after, we pick a couple of clusters and that fruit load is more balanced with the leaf material, then, so it's kind of an early season for several different reasons. So even moisture as much as we can and ruling out soil
Right.
nutrient stuff.
And I don't want to like be a negative Nancy and be like, foliar feeding of calcium doesn't work. I mean, yeah, you can provide some additional calcium that way. But like Sydney said, most of the time people are seeing that early on that first bottom crop, right? That starts maturing. They come in and they're like, oh, I'm going to use this foliar feeding, and they put it on there. And then when they get into that second and third set of blooms, it's much improved. And so they think it's because they added the foliar calcium when probably it's just has grown out of the condition. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Lucas, I can't hear
Also,
you.
Lucas has got something.
so I do this talk now called social media and gardening because social media will try to tell you to put Tums
I
under
knew
the
Oh,
you were going to say
tomatoes
about Tums.
and eggshells. So Texas A&M did research. It takes about 5 years for the calcium to be available from an eggshell. And
wow.
if you needed to raise the calcium in a raised bed, one researcher did research. It took 760 tums in a 10 by 10 bed to raise the calcium. So please don't believe that on social media. Please stop listening to social media about tums and eggshells.
Listen to Lucas about watermelon ruffles hibiscus, but don't listen.
Tums, stop with the tums.
Yes, yes. Awesome. Okay. So let's we're gonna stay on veggies for a minute because we're trying to divide our time equally today between fruits and veggies and
We have
ornamentals.
47 seconds left for vegetables.
Well, we're gonna take a little more than 47 seconds. So let's go because this question is really fun. So it says, and we could take this in some different ways. What and when should I start planting in my raised beds for cold weather crops? And do not laugh if y'all are on this call and you're like, it is July. Why are we thinking about cool season crops? But really, now is the time that we need to be thinking about it. And I know that Lucas loves cool season vegetable crops. So I'm just going to let him kind of take us where he will on this topic for the
If
moment. And
if
then
it
everyone else can chime in.
if it forms a head, it needs to be transplanted into the garden. Cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. So if it's a leafy green, direct seeding works fine. So I know Celeste was talking about, oh, it's crazy to think about cabbage right now. Cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, those things that need to be transplanted need to be started inside 6 to 8 weeks before you plant them in your fall garden. So ideally in my fall garden, and I love cool season crops. I try to get those out in my garden. I'm in Wilson County between the 10th and the 15th of September.
Yeah.
So if you go back 6 to 8 weeks, and I'm like, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm not gonna lie, I've already got my Swiss chard seeds. I haven't planted them. They came in from Johnny's this past weekend. So I've got a lot of my kale seeds and Swiss chard seeds that came in last week. But it's crazy to even think about. But now is the time to start those things. So leafy greens, I'm probably not going to plant directly in my garden until probably the first week of September. Those things need to be in the ground before we start getting a lot of heavy frost. And
Yeah.
ideally, Wilson County, we don't get heavy frost till Halloween-ish.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff. And I remember one year picking cabbage on January the 15th, and it would freeze and it would thaw, and it did fine. And I've got pictures of all this stuff. We can
Mhm.
garden almost 12 months of the year in Tennessee, and people
Yeah.
don't take advantage of it. I'm
That's
not
right.
pointing my finger at you, Celeste, but everybody else.
So oftentimes I don't take advantage of the growing edible food crops 12 months of the year, but I try to always have some kind of
She's
flowering
she's
crops going.
frost seeding her flowers at that point in time.
Yeah.
I
She's
am.
not committed to the lettuce
And
like she needs to
my
be.
my favorite snapdragons just came in.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
will be getting
Yeah.
those started like literally when
Yeah.
I come back from this trip that I'm going
Well,
on here. I'm going to
Lucas
start
is
my
ahead of
snap
me.
seeds.
Celeste is trying to transition this to flowers, and like we're not quite done. We're not quite done yet.
Okay, back to
Wait, no,
vegetables.
no. My cart. You're ahead of me, Lucas. Like it's sitting open on my computer right now. I already have all my cabbage and broccoli picked out. So yeah, get those transplanted soon. Lots of times with our lettuce and that kind of stuff, we'll have like through September. If you Lucas likes to direct seed a lot of leafies. I like to transplant my lettuce because I'm a little bit obsessive about my spacing and my, bib heads and allows them to be very uniform. But yeah, you've got time and also it's time. You
Now,
can think about lettuce like 10
now
months a
those
year.
things form ahead, but like black seeded Simpson in just
Yeah.
in a row.
Yeah.
Romaine, bib forms ahead, so I would still transplant those too. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, y'all, it's time to be thinking
Okay.
about those
We
cool
we
season
turn the
veggies.
floor over to you.
Okay, all
Flower
right.
away. Oh, was Bob gonna
Bob?
say something?
No, maybe. Yep.
Yes, yes. Well, and we could enjoy some other crops too, like bush beans and
Ooh,
others that we can have a
yes.
fall harvest and really enjoy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Any of those
Second
that
round of
have
cukes.
yeah, if we have 60-day, I mean, let's think. We're in the middle of July, August, September. If you can find anything that's going to mature between like 60 and what 85-ish days, go ahead and plant you a succession crop of it now, even if it isn't technically considered a cool season crop. You could have that later warm season harvest, definitely. That's how we stack things. That's how we roll, right? We want to get the most production out of our especially small space gardening as we can.